Salah.
It's a bad start.
That's why we're not the dream team. Salah, Mane, and Firmino of the podcast world. Well,
the
Blood Red podcast world.
Who's who though? That's the big question.
I think
you Firmino knitting things together.
I think I'll have to be, won't I?
I'm Salah, aren't I?
You're
Let's
Salah,
be honest.
Yeah.
I'll take Mane all day.
Yeah. We're back live on YouTube. It's the international break still, so today is a special Q&A pod. Got quite a few questions in already. I've got them copied into my emails here, but I will be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you've got questions as we proceed, I'll have a look at them there, and I'll have a look on Twitter as well. If anyone's given us a tweet, and add them to it as well. Before we get started, a big thank you to our sponsors, NordVPN, who help us do what we do. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred, and our link gives you 4 months extra on a 2-year plan. There's no risk at all with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast episode description box. And also, we are live, so give us some thumbs up. Press the bell. You like me saying that, don't you? And if you listen on Apple Pods or Spotify, give us some stars. You can leave some feedback there. We always like reading it, so please do.
5 stars, isn't it?
5 stars is what we asked for. I think 4 is a minimum. If you're going to give 3,
4 is fair because there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, and if you're going to give 3 and below,
just don't.
Why are you listening?
It's mean.
Yeah, just say nice things. Before we start, I've got a special message I would like to read out. If you are local in Liverpool or further afield, you may have heard of Zoe's Place. The Liverpool Echo has officially joined a citywide campaign to try and save Zoe's Place Baby Hospice in Liverpool from being closed. We have 30 days to raise 5 million. It's obviously a huge ask, but we know if any city can do it, it's this one. The centre's in New Tree Lane, West Derby, and it provides respite, palliative and end-of-life care for babies and children up to the age of 5. And it has supported countless local families in their most difficult moments. You only really have to look at some of the feedback to the announcement last week that they would have to close if they don't raise that money to see how much it means to people on Merseyside and further afield. And staff and families of children being cared for at Zoe's Place were told on Monday that the centre would close before the end of the year and that staff would lose their job in 30 days. So Zoe's Place needs a new home as the lease on its current site runs out next year. So if you can, please donate to the campaign to save Zoe's Place. A link to the Just Giving page will be in the description box on the podcast on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you can donate there. Let's save Zoe's Place. Please give generously.
And we've already had Robbie Fowler on board.
Yeah, Robbie Fowler's on board. Aldo as well.
And Jamie Carragher's got 1 or 2 things in the pipeline as well. So, the good and the great of Liverpool FC are already on board to help out. Yeah, certainly. The whole city, I think, is behind this one. So let's see if we can do it. I'm sure we can. Right, gents. Questions. So lots and lots of questions coming in. So we will go through them as we go. But let's start with the most important one from Beth Lindop, who isn't with us today on the pod, but she will be back on Friday. And I'm going to sort of tweak it slightly. If you can choose only one member of the Echo Sports Desk to make you a brew, that's a cup of tea, between now until the end of time, who would it be? And you can have current and you can have past all time.
That's easy. Past Dave Prentice.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Preno. So I'd rule out James Pearce because he used to leave the tea bags in.
Oh, that's poor.
He used to just forget to take
Pearce was a rush job, wasn't he?
Yeah. If I wasn't me, I'd vote for me. My brews are really good.
You can't vote. You should never ever vote you.
It's like journalism awards. Anything where you have to enter yourself, that's never a good thing.
On your most recent Premier League table of brews,
I think I came top.
I was the
what a surprise!
The highest ranked current Echo employee, so I'll take that as me being number 1 in the office currently.
So your current is. Well, no, it can't be. I was the highest ranked.
Yeah,
you,
I know.
You're the second
obviously you vote for yourself.
I don't vote for
myself.
That's
Preno was 2, and then I was 3.
So Preno's your all timer. Who's your current?
I can't think of anyone who makes particularly bad ones in the Sam Carroll mould. I think most of our viewers will know what we're referring to on that one. But
Ian, our producer, put that up on the screen
just
now.
Give it a retweet now.
You put that picture up on the screen. No.
I wasn't listening.
No.
Is there anybody still listening to this podcast?
Yeah.
Let us continue
hang on,
with Liverpool-based.
Quickly.
What?
Come on. Your all-time is Preno. Who's your current?
I don't know.
Give us a
Gorsty.
name.
There you go.
Gorsty. I'm going to say Gorsty as well.
I'll take that.
Which is slightly unfair because I'm top of the league. But I'll say Preno all time. Right. There you go, Beth. Hope you're happy with that. Beth, you're not technically on a desk, so we wouldn't vote for you anyway. Right. So.
But we won't for her anyway.
You know, excluded from the brew round.
Yeah. The first Liverpool question is... it's a question from Ireland. Love from Ireland. Thank you very much for your support. Do you think we'll buy any players in January, either way, if the big three contracts aren't signed or not? My worry, it's been so hard to find a replacement for certain areas on the pitch for so long. What will happen if we then lose those three in the summer? And it's a really legitimate worry, isn't it? Because Liverpool have struggled in some places for their succession plans. Gorsty, go on. I'll let you start first.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at Liverpool's squad, I think there are 4 players who probably fall into the world-class bracket, and 3 of them are out of contract in the summer. I think Van Dijk, obviously Salah, Trent and Alisson. Probably the 4 world-class performers, aren't they? The rest are just sort of, top-class, would be big players at most European clubs. But I think those 4 are the real superstars of the team. And it's a major worry, yeah. Of course, it's not really going anywhere, is it? We don't really seem to see anything in the way of public developments. I think Van Dijk's spoken about his situation. Salah obviously did it after the United game, and Trent, you were one of the ones who spoke to him recently, weren't you, Doyle? So, they have been asked about it, but there just doesn't appear to be anything in the way of concrete progress. And we know that sometimes these things happen relatively sort of, not necessarily out the blue, but I think it was maybe a little bit of a surprise to learn last week that talks about Kanate's representatives, for example, and maybe less of a surprise that the deal was done with Kwanzaa. But yeah, it's just becoming more and more of a concern now, and I think it's something like 80 days, is it? Maybe a little bit more before they can speak to clubs outside of England, and maybe that's not a particularly big issue for Van Dijk and Salah, but it certainly is for Trent, because we know Real Madrid will be sniffing around. So yeah, the longer that goes on, the more Liverpool fans have every right to get increasingly agitated about it. And in terms of buying anyone at the moment, you can't really think of anything that's jumping out at Liverpool of an area where they need to improve, is there? So, maybe we'll have more of an idea as we get to Christmas, the areas that Slot may feel he wants to improve on. Maybe there's injuries, but at the moment I don't think Liverpool are going to be massively busy in the market, and I think certainly results have shown that they don't need to be at the moment.
It's not, they don't need lots of players, do they? If they can add 1 or 2. We've seen before that they'll spend in January.
Yeah.
They have spent in most Januaries recently, haven't they, when players have come up?
Diaz, Gakpo.
Yeah.
Was anyone last year? I don't think there was there?
Maybe not last year, but in general they seem to move for players, don't they? Doyle, if they think a deal can be done.
If Zubimendi wants to leave Real Sociedad in January, I think Liverpool will try and sign him.
Yeah.
And we know they've got the money there for it, otherwise they wouldn't have approached in the first place. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the deal is in terms of his release clause. Does it still apply? I've not really been paying much attention. I would assume it would do, because there was never any suggestion of a deadline on that. So it was just the whole fiddly bit, and Sociedad called his bluff, and he said, "I want to stay."
Isn't his release clause just the Spanish one, the one that they have to have?
Yeah. Was it 51 million?
51
So
million.
there isn't, unless he signs a new contract, there isn't there's never a sort of expiry on that, is there?
Yeah. So the deadline is his contract, basically, isn't it? Yeah. So if he fancies it, then I think Liverpool quite clearly will go in for him, because they wanted him, and as well as Gravenberch has done and the rest of them have done, they can't play all the games. We've seen with Spain, I think it was this week, didn't he? He scored the winner against Denmark, and the Spanish manager, whose name was, I've forgotten, I can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah. Even though I can tell you that he was talking about...
De La Fuente, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, yeah, that's it. He was basically saying that, Rodri's the best midfielder in the world, and look, we've got the second best midfielder in the world in Zubimendi. Yeah. He was doing really well.
High praise.
Yeah. Just a follow-up question to the contracts. Just playing devil's advocate a bit, take Trent out of it. At what point do Liverpool say, right, we do need to move on from Van Dijk and Salah? They're in their 30s. At what point do you think it's fair for them to... Because I can understand maybe there might be a certain school of thought at Liverpool. We can't just keep giving these guys contracts, because at some point their levels will drop, and then we'll have tied them down to contracts.
I've got to say, from Liverpool's point of view, I don't think they're going to get a fee for either of them ever. I think that's gone, right? So ultimately, you keep them until they're not playing anymore. Then ultimately, it's on the manager, and when he deems them to be no longer able to regularly start games, because if that happens, I think the player themselves will go, well, I've always been used to starting games at this high standard. I fancy going off somewhere else. I think that's when it would come to a natural end if it doesn't already.
I think Liverpool obviously guided a lot by data, aren't they? And I think if you look at the underlying numbers for someone like Van Dijk this season, he's been streets ahead of 9 out of 10 defenders in European football. So how long can he keep that going? I think maybe the age is probably the only real concern that Liverpool have, because if these numbers are being produced at 28, you think, hell, this guy's going to be a world beater for years to come. Maybe it's slightly different to 33, where numbers can tail off dramatically and suddenly. But everything you've seen so far this season in 10 games, which is a decent sample size without being huge, I think you've seen that Van Dijk is still absolutely top class, isn't he? So even in a couple of years, I don't think it's going to be one of those where he's going to be, within 18 months, you're thinking that this is a fella who's dramatically fallen off and there's nowhere near the level that he's at now. So I think for Van Dijk in particular, there has to be a real concerted effort to get that one over the line. Salah may be a little bit different, because he might have offers from, if the Saudi revolution, there's still sort of any mileage left in that one, I'm not sure. But for Van Dijk, especially for someone who's, freely admits he loves the club and all that, not long being the club captain, I think Liverpool have to get that one done. I
mean, with Salah, he has evolved as a player, isn't he? He's not the sort of goal scorer. He still scores a lot of goals, but he's not the goal scorer he was. He tends to be more of a creator now, doesn't he? In some of the ways he plays, he's a bit more involved in everything the team does, and I wonder whether Liverpool will value that quite as highly as they all. You look very angry with me, and look just staring into my soul.
You've got a soul,
but yeah, I wonder whether Liverpool might look at him a little bit differently and the types of money he's on.
I think I'll be remembering Van Dijk is that he plays in the one outfield position where you can hang on for a bit longer.
Yeah.
I think you look at Johnny Evans at United, where as much as we laugh at United, well, I don't laugh at United, I know you two do, laugh at United and the way things are going there.
He's been Ten Hag's best signing.
Exactly. Because he brings experience, and it's the one position where you can use that experience, because you've got most of the team in front of you, especially with Van Dijk being the captain as well. Salah is a bit different. He has changed a little bit.
Thiago Silva's the one for that, isn't he?
Yeah, Thiago.
He's still 39, is he still going at a really high level?
Yeah.
I see no reason why Van Dijk can't do likewise.
Especially when Thiago Silva was playing at Chelsea, we were just still a major European team, so it was not like he was playing for somebody a little bit lesser. But yeah, Salah, again, he's a different case in the sense he's a little bit like Ronaldo in the fact that he's one of these ones that's now massively into, I'm going to say self-preservation, but you know what I mean by that, don't you?
Yeah.
He wants to prolong his career as long as he possibly can. And
it's funny, just you say the Ronaldo comparison there, but it's funny how he's changed. Ronaldo became more selfish, I think, as he grew older, and it became about how can you put it on a plate for me to score.
Yeah.
And whereas Salah has changed and he's become less selfish, hasn't he?
It's notably obvious how he's trying to assist more.
Yeah.
There was a chance, was it against
Bologna the other day?
There was a
tried to play a few
one
passes.
against Brentford where he tries to lay Nunez in and it gets cut out. He just seems to be very focused on gathering assists more so than normal.
Probably for the first time in his Liverpool career, the onus is on him to prove he deserves a new contract rather than Liverpool proving that Salah should sign with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Sam Williams, friend of the show. Hi, Sam. Thank you for your question. Asked quite a few questions, so I'll just start in the middle because we're still talking about contracts. At what point do we start getting really concerned about these three big contract situations? I'd say now.
December the 31st. I'd get a bit worried if they haven't. No, that's not me even being facetious, because you could see the club doing something silly like December the 31st. And there's a late Christmas present for everybody,
Do you
something
think they would leave it that late?
It would be fun. If I was, I'd do something like that. Yeah, I think that would be funny.
Surely,
not least because I'll be off that day. So good luck.
I know that would be great fun in some ways, but surely the club can't do that, because Anslot would be getting asked in every press conference. He's already sick of getting asked.
Yeah, less so with Van Dijk and Salah. I wouldn't be too concerned if it was sort of in March and it's still going, but for Trent, Yeah.
Yeah,
Real Madrid are going to be ringing up him, midnight on New Year's Day.
Yeah. I mean,
they'll be an hour ahead as well. Actually, that's a good point, that, because they'll be an hour ahead. So if they phone up at midnight Spanish time, are they against the Liverpool could get them? Yeah, it would be. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do a piece. To be fair, somebody will do a piece on this, won't they? Now that we've said it.
Right. If you've got any more questions about contracts or transfers, drop them in the chat. We'll try and get to them. We'll stick with Sam Williams and his questions. It's Joel Matip, who announced his retirement at the weekend. Liverpool's best ever free signing.
I think the only one who can rival him is James Milner. And I know there's a lot of sort of nostalgia attached to Gary McAllister, but I think a lot of that centres around maybe a little run in April of 2001 when he scores against Barcelona and Everton and obviously the UEFA Cup final as well. But in terms of all round, what was Matip at the club for there? Was it 8 years? Was it 8 years? Is that
8, it was 8, yeah.
And he's won everything, Champions League, Premier League, FA Cup, League Cup, all that stuff. I think he has to be alongside Milner as 1 or 2, and I think probably have him as 1 maybe because I think Milner probably played more games and was a bigger influence sort of around the culture of the club, but Milner was never really, in Liverpool's first choice 11 if everyone was fit, whereas Matip was. Hence him starting the Champions League final when everyone was fit. So probably for me 1.
You're saying number 1, yeah?
I'd say Milner number 1 and Matip number 2. And you're looking at the third one, you might say Adrian, wouldn't you, Joe?
You were going to say that? I had him up. Don't you dare.
Adrian. He's won a lot. He certainly must have said one of the most... Well, Marcus Babbel would be the other one as well, wouldn't he?
He is not even as good as the other free transfer goalkeeper, who is Peggy Arfexed.
Oh, come on, Joe. You're just being ridiculous now.
Come on, Peggy was great.
You're really being stupid. There are people listening to this. There are people who are basically taking time out of their busy Monday afternoons to listen to you come up with this dribble.
I like Peggy Arfexed. He was good. He's
not as good as Adrian.
Better than Adrian.
Come on.
He wore tracksuit bottoms. Gary McAllister, we could go back. Cavame, Staunton, Eric Meyer. Gary McAllister, Peggy Arfexed, Marcus Babbel, very good one. Patrice Luzi, the second best goalkeeper Liverpool signed on a free transfer.
Babbel's probably up there just for that season, isn't he?
Yeah,
sadly got ill.
Bolo Zenden, Fabio Aurelio.
Zenden's a good shout, to be fair.
He wasn't bad,
Zenden's good, good player.
Fabio Aurelio, good player.
Aurelio's second time round.
He transfer
from himself.
Got rid of him, brought him back.
Andre Voronin.
Okay, that's enough.
But
Philip Dagan, Joe Cole.
With the exception of Matip, all of these are squad players.
Yeah.
Matip came into...
I'm not saying Milner's a squad player. The first 3 years he played every single game.
That, before they signed Van Dijk, Matip was Liverpool's best centre-back, wasn't he? And up until he got that injury at Fulham in December, he was first choice with Van Dijk.
Well, the thing as well is that Matip was injury prone. I think he only made some 202 appearances, which sounds like a lot, but then it was over 8 years. But until he got that injury against Fulham, I think he'd missed about 4 or 5 games through injury the previous 18 months. So he actually had been fit because he'd been playing a lot of that. Was that right? I'm trying to think. I don't know. I might have got this wrong, actually.
I can't think of...
Maybe he'd had a little bit of an injury in the 22-23, but he was there for most of the 21-22 season, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I would probably go for Milner just because of, first of all, the variety of positions he played. In fact, he was vice captain during a very glittering period. He played in pretty much all the big games, didn't he?
Captain of the Europa League final, didn't he? Yeah.
Scored a lot of important goals for them, and just conducted himself really well. Obviously, was a huge influence in the dressing room. But Matip, I mean, it's razor thin, isn't it? I mean, Matip was one of those players who, because he played alongside Van Dijk, who obviously did help him, made him better, but was very, very good. I don't necessarily think outside of Liverpool circles people will realise just how good Matip was, but he was very dominant, could bring the ball out. Was quite calm under pressure, wasn't he? But you did.
Plus, all the other players loved him.
He was popular.
A difficult one to speak to, though, after games. He famously gave 2 or 3 red answers, and not because he didn't really want to be there. It was more just he was the quiet man, wasn't he, after Liverpool set up. And in a way, I think a lot of that went down to why he was certainly underappreciated outside of Liverpool circles because he was just understated and went about his business, didn't he? But brilliant player.
Yeah, strange comments. Matip, when fit, is more of a defender than Milner, a midfielder. I don't necessarily think that's...
This is what, sorry?
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, it's razor thin. You're welcome to say whichever you want. Because
they're one and two, aren't they, surely?
Yeah, they're the two, aren't they? And then I would probably say maybe Marcus Babbel third. Oh, sorry, Gary McAllister third.
Not Adrian, no.
Not Adrian, no. As I say, Peggy RFX said, Patrice Lucy, Andy Lonergan, Adam Bogdan,
you and our former
Alex
colleague,
Manninger, all of them.
You and our former colleague,
Yeah,
Marcus Banks are so...
my chances of getting an Adrian podcast there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, hopefully he doesn't listen to this one. Right, another question from Sam. Has Sam Carroll learned to make a brew yet? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No.
And any truth in Benfica left back Carreras?
Yeah, this is the guy who was at United for 4 years. I think they got him from Real Madrid. Right. And then they sold him in the summer, because I was actually reading about this, because I was like, that name rings a bell. But he went for, I think it was like £8 or £9 million to Benfica in the summer. Suddenly now he's worth about 50 million. Because he's had about 10 or 11 good games at Benfica. Yeah. I think this is the player we're talking about. But again, it goes back to what you were talking about, succession planning. And you mentioned Alisson, you've got Mamadashvili. We don't know what they're going to do with long-term with Van Dijk, although they do have Canati and Quanta, obviously. Yeah. Salah, you haven't really got anyone in for him yet, unless you count Chiesa, but I don't think that's what he was brought in for. And then you look at the left-back situation, and... Robertson's 31 now, is he? 31?
He's only 30, isn't he?
No, but only 30.
I think he's 31 now, Robertson.
But he's played a lot of games.
He's starting to pick up more little knocks.
Getting his minutes managed.
Yeah. He's 30, Gorst, right.
Yeah, and Tsimikas is, he's never been a first choice at Liverpool. Mm-hmm. Although he has been there for he's been there for more than 4 years now, Tsimikas. So, he's nobody's fill when it comes to his actual talent. But there is something in terms of left back, and it's a one position probably in the youth, the academy setup. There's been one or two like Luke Chambers and Owen Beck, and I wonder whether they're actually going to be able to make it at Liverpool. Luke Chambers I think is quite good, but I think he may end up being more of a centre back, to be honest.
Yeah. I think Aït-Nouri is probably the one who Liverpool might be looking at in terms of their long term left back plans.
How old's Aït-Nouri?
26, 22.
He's 22. He's
fairly young, yeah.
He'd be wanted by a lot of teams.
23,
yeah.
I mean, I haven't had that sort of communicated to me, but it just seems like Wolves are a good breeding ground, a good sort of chance to get a look of how a player performs in the Premier League, and
we know they like to do that, don't they? If they've got Premier League
he always
experience.
does quite well against Liverpool, so if he's playing for
him, he's a good player. To be fair,
Right. Next question. We'll move on from Sam now. I think that's all his questions. Thanks again, Sam. Paul Flanagan, ahead of the Chelsea game, what are your favourite recent memories in clashes between the sides? There's obviously been a lot of 0-0s in
the League Cup final.
But the League Cup final,
absolutely hilarious. That one, yeah,
it's like definitely one of my.
It's one of my favourite games covering Liverpool ever.
Was it because I was there?
Oh, sorry.
Was it because I was there?
I'd forgotten you were there.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely, it was good weekend, that wasn't it? Obviously incredible sort of game to be covering. Liverpool obviously winning.
Reserves winning, yeah.
The FA Cup was good as well, and the League Cup a few months before that. I quite liked Liverpool battering Chelsea in January at Anfield. That was one of their best performances of that season. A game that just totally summed up Darwin Núñez, because he had Chelsea up the wall, and it was a brilliant performance from him. But then he misses a penalty and it's the post 3 times.
Didn't he put the ball over the bar as well from like 6 yards out? I feel like
I'd forgotten he missed the penalty.
He had a brilliant game, but then people remember it from probably should have scored 4.
Yeah.
But that was a great performance from him and from Liverpool in general that day. Other than that, there's not been a lot of them been draws. Are
we talking ever? Because obviously
in recent.
Oh, in recent times.
So it is one.
But the Super Cup was quite good a few years ago in Istanbul.
The Klopp and Lampard on the last
5-3. That's when they lifted the title, but there was nobody there.
But there was no one there. But the penalty shootout in the FA Cup final. Was it the FA Cup? Or the FA Cup?
No, it's the League Cup one that went on forever.
The one where
the
Van Dijk basically.
That's the League Cup.
Who was it? The goalkeeper,
League Cup.
Kepa, stood in the corner and said, "Put it."
Yeah.
And Van Dijk put it in that corner.
He got brought on
high up
for pens. Because
yeah.
Mendy had a great game, which
Yeah.
for some reason got brought off.
Yeah.
And then Kepa didn't get near one, and then blazed it over the bar.
Yeah, and then Keller had taken one, him blazing it over the bar. It was a very Chelsea, we're trying to be really clever thing to do.
Chelsea must be absolutely sick of Liverpool.
Yeah.
Like the way they've lost finals the last three.
I mean, to be fair, Liverpool did lose a number of finals to them in 2000s, 2010s as well. So
They do seem to be two clubs. I always remember when they first became a rival, and there was always that, they're not rivals, but they're two clubs who meet each other at big moments, don't they? They always seem to find a way of meeting each other at big moments.
What is it, 20 years now, isn't it, since Benitez came in, Mourinho went to Chelsea, and then that sort of, I think they played each other 18 or 20 times in the space of about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
They're in the same group in the Champions League.
yeah, both games 0-0. I was at them both.
He did ask for recent things, but going back to those 0-0 games, they were like the tensest games I think I've ever attended in my life.
Jamie Carragher always mentions that.
Yeah.
About how you couldn't make
a
any mistake.
Yeah. And my favourite moment against Chelsea is a non-goal. It was when Goodjohnson had that shot, and I always remember Anfield being as quiet, I think, as I've ever heard it. And then you heard it hit the PlayStation 2
Stanchion, whatever it was.
MasterCard,
Hoarding
around the pitch. And I always remember the thump of that, and then Anfield erupting because they knew that was it, really. Then, so I always think that was a great moment.
Yeah, no, it's there's been some.
That's not recent,
famous
though.
games.
That's not
isn't
recent.
it?
One of those I'd have picked
I remember them drawing
Yeah, you can
2-2
throw
at
it in.
Stamford Bridge just after New Year, a couple of years back, and it was a really high quality game.
Yeah, they were 2-0 up, weren't they?
Yeah. And like everyone was on it, and it was really fast.
Kelleher was in goal and Klopp wasn't there. They both had Corona.
Because of where you sit at Chelsea in the press box, you're quite low and you can see it up close, and you just get a feeling of how fast it actually is. I enjoyed Liverpool beating them there the season they won the league. That it was like an early statement, wasn't it?
2-1. Trent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Trent and Firmino,
Yeah.
You get to see Rob Wootton as well, don't you, from Sky? He's a Chelsea fan. He sits near the press box. I hope I've not just outed that, by the way.
That Trent one was a free kick, wasn't it, where they shifted it to?
Yeah.
It wasn't like his normal free kick, which
Yeah.
is usually just takes a dead ball like he did for England the other night. It was like
So I
the
think
old
it
school.
officially goes down as a non-free kick goal, doesn't it?
That, by the way, is something. This is completely kind of off topic, but you don't see those types of free kicks anymore, do you? The shift and hit. Remember, there was a time in Liverpool, that's all they did from free kicks. Risa, Gerrard, Haman, they all did.
Wasn't the one
there was one recently
where Salah did it to
Salah
Trent?
did it, and it didn't. I think they did. He hit it over the bar.
I think did it to Henderson on the way in. Was it against Palace? And
No,
it hit Henderson on the head.
This is literally in the last couple of weeks they did it.
Yeah. But you don't see as many of them, and there was a time when Liverpool always used to do that. I wonder if
changes the angle.
Yeah, changes the angle. Right. A few more questions. There's a question in the chat from Aravind. Is it possible that performances of the three players whose contracts are running out might drop off slightly once contracts are signed? And is that why the club might drag it on a bit? And then they do put in brackets wishful thinking, which I think is very wishful thinking.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I think it's more likely that if they don't, I think it's more. It'll be interesting to see what happens towards the end of the season if they are going and they've got other clubs lined up, whether or not that's when it drops off. But if people are going for stuff, why on earth would they? Why would you make all that effort for like 7 or 8 months? Then the last 2 months go, well, I'm leaving soon, so I'll just stop now, even though I could win the Premier League and the Champions League and whatever. So I can't see that happening.
Paul Flanagan also asked, by the way, when on that pod recently when we talked about favourite desserts, he said, "What's your favourite starter?" Starters
that could be anything.
It could be anything. It covers a wide variety of different things.
Do you find soup boring, or is it if it's a good
I find soup. I like a good soup, but I find it a bit boring, and I don't like eating it as a starter because it's too filling. If you get soup,
what if you have it with bread?
Yeah, and then
you'd have it for like your lunch if you're that way inclined.
I don't think it's technically soup, but I love chowder.
That's not
Chowder's
soup.
great.
It's like a stew, isn't it? Really.
I suppose. I don't know.
I know. I would imagine they would call it a soup, but
yeah, you know where it does a good chowder. God, it's gone out of my head now. The place we went for the Christmas do a few times. I'll give them a shout out.
Papignon.
No, we only.
I know what you mean. But Free State Kitchen.
Free State Kitchen. Yeah, do a great chowder. So if you're in Liverpool and you want a good chowder, go to Free State Kitchen.
You're going to get a free one now.
Yeah, please.
It's so blatant, this product placement. Come on.
Given Joe's recent piece, it wasn't recent.
I would like a flight to, I don't know, Barcelona. There you
Barcelona?
Go. Yeah,
Is
it's really
that
nice at Barcelona. It's really good.
I
just felt like it, start small.
Yeah.
You're only after a little bit of free soup.
Flight to Melbourne. Dr. Chris Tibbs, given Joe's recent piece, it wasn't recent, on 10 things only Liverpool supporters growing up in the 90s.
Why wasn't it recent,
we'll remember. What is your favourite LFC moment from the 90s? Doyle, you were a middle-aged man in the 90s. Tell us.
I've already answered this when it ended.
To be fair, that was a good...
When it ended.
When it ended,
yeah. No, when it ended.
Yeah,
That's one of my favourite bit of the 90s.
What's your second favourite moment?
We won the league in 1990, so you'd have to say that.
Yeah, that is true, actually.
Oh, hang on! When they beat Newcastle 4-3, that was hilarious.
That was
hilarious. That was.
It's a lot of ground cover there. A decade of pick one moment.
Yeah. But in the FA, well, it's like when you win stuff. They only won the two things in the FA Cup in '92 and the. Oh, they beat us there. That was good. 3-0. One of the comeback games, beating United to stop winning the league and going, that'll stop them, and then they won it for about 20 years in a run after that. So a bit of a.
I'll probably go with winning the League Cup in 1995 because that was the first trophy I remember Liverpool winning.
Yeah, probably have to say the same. I don't remember a lot of them in the 90s,
You can't remember a lot. Then again, you only born when 1988.
I was only born 88, so...
I remember all the 90s, obviously.
The end of the 90s.
It was my formative years.
Yeah.
Too young to remember. Certainly too young to remember the league in 90 and then the FA Cup in 92.
The Ecru kit was probably...
Yeah. See, I remember a lot of them are bad memories, like losing to Middlesbrough in the League Cup.
Oh, yeah.
And losing to Bristol City at home and losing to Bolton in the FA Cup. And
I think that's the worst kit that Liverpool have ever lost to.
The purple and green, it's terrible. Brian Tinian scored the goal. Yeah.
Still remember him sliding in front of the dugout.
Yeah, it was right in front of where I was sat, actually. Yeah.
We've got some good feedback here from Derek Palmer, who says, talking absolute bile, just stick to football. This is like watching loose women give me strength. I've never watched them.
To be fair, I kind of agree in part with him, but it is the international break, so if there's ever a time where we can just, chew the fat, then this is it.
Yeah, we're sorry, Derek.
We haven't veered off course too much.
Yeah, you won't like. Well, I've got a football question, then we'll break it up again. Is there any truth in the rumour Harvey Elliott is back in training this week?
Well, I spoke to someone at the top of last week, and he was saying that it's a possibility, but not sure whether Liverpool are back in today. Possibly are back in today, but he's in the gym.
Yeah.
At last check, which was towards the middle of last week, he's in the gym. He was targeting a comeback for the Chelsea game, we believed, but there was some suggestion that might have been optimistic. So I guess we'll wait and see this week. But hopefully he is sort of closer to a comeback than not, because I think with the upcoming schedule, it'll be important for him to get some minutes under his belt, and disappointed for him that he missed the last few weeks, because he would have played, wouldn't he? And possibly against Bologna, certainly in the League Cup, and would have. I think he was in really good form actually towards the end of last season. I think it's disappointing.
Good summer, didn't he? Good
that he's still waiting to sort of kickstart his own spell on the slot.
I think he's going to be really important in the next. If he gets fit, he can be really important in the next 12 games.
So do I.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain more why? That's kind of the point of the podcast.
Because of what Paul was just saying then, can't really add much to that. I mean,
we've talked before about style of play, things like that.
Many times about
Harvey Elliott. Do I have to spoon feed you?
About Harvey Elliott. Yeah. And do you reckon Harvey Elliott makes a good cup of tea?
Don't.
What I would say is he's a very different type of number 10, isn't he, to what Szoboszlai has been asked to do. Cover ground.
So someone can do it. Come on.
Put the hard yards in. A little bit more possibly creative. That's not a bit unfair on Szoboszlai. That assist that he got for Carvalho against Arsenal was brilliant. Yeah. And he got the first one in that game as well, like for Salah. And looked like he was really ready to take the next step. And he said as much, actually. We had a chance to speak to him after open training, I think. And he was talking about how he feels like a really senior member of the squad now, even though he's still only 21. And I think that injury's just come at a really inopportune time for him. So hopefully he is back in training this week, but we'll find out a little bit more later this week.
What I would say about Harvey is that he started on the right wing, he played for a bit on the left wing, he spent a lot of time in the midfield, but all the way through all of that you thought, you don't want to be best suited as a number 10. Klopp didn't play as a number 10. Slots come in and he said, right, you and Szoboszlai, you're our number 10 options. So I'm just waiting to see what he's going to be like playing the position that I actually think that he'll be really good in, and whether or not he justifies the kind of faith that a lot of people have in him, and also the potential that he's quite clearly got, because in those other positions he has been he delivered in the second half of last season in particular, in terms of numbers, in terms of assists towards the end of the season, goals as well, and he's acquired that kind of long range shot on him as well. We've mentioned this quite a few times in podcast recently. So yeah, I think he will be important, and of course because he's got all that experience on his belt, it's not like one of these players who when he comes in you go, he's going to have to take time to adjust. It won't take him any time to adjust. He's naturally, because he's had injury in the past, but he had a serious injury with the fractured his ankle, didn't he, against Leeds?
Yeah.
He knows what it's like to come back from a bad injury, and this isn't a particularly nasty injury as such. I mean, it still hurts. Like, it's kept him out for longer than anyone would have wanted, but he'll know exactly what he has to do to come back, and he's still not 22 until next April. So this is a player who, as you said, Joe, he could be somebody who Liverpool are reliant on and could become a very important player for Liverpool over the next 4 or 5 years. And the way that the game's changed is kind of fits in. Normally when he was coming through, certainly at Fulham, and he was trying to make his way at Liverpool, in the old days you'd go, he's a bit small. But that doesn't really matter anymore. I think if you are good enough, you're tall enough. As the phrase does not go. Yeah. Is that better?
Yeah, I wish that phrase was true to life. I think he'd be very important. We haven't really seen many of them since the Nottingham Forest game, but anyone who comes and sits in at Anfield, that's when, a player like Elliott with the shot he's got on him and the way he can sort of
he's
unpick.
a scurrier as well, and I think that's what he likes, getting in and around things, and I think that makes him very, very dangerous when you're coming up against teams who are sitting deep.
That was a question from Chris Brack, so thank you, Chris. Chris has also asked us, more importantly, what's your crisp game?
Crisps?
Yeah.
I'll eat any of them. I love crisps.
Eat any of them.
That's a whole day about them.
Yeah, there you go.
My dad used to work for Golden Wonder in the accounts department in Kirby.
I don't know why that made me laugh.
That's a great fact. I didn't know that.
And he said that you've never tasted a crisp unless you've tasted it straight off the conveyor belt, because they are still warm.
Wow, there you go.
That's right. He got sacked, and there's another story about that. He got sacked. He got sacked after being falsely accused of robbing. So
He was on the conveyor belt.
I think that's a perk of the job.
We just exposed your dad as a crisp thief, the great crisp heist of
it's a long story behind that, but he wasn't the only one. They were trying to get rid of a load of people. They sacked people for random nonsense, and then they all got together and went to offer, take him to a tribunal, and they suddenly all stepped down, and this, that, and the other. Anyway, there you go. Little bit of that's the late 70s for you.
Well, I like prawn cocktail, so there you go. Derek Palmer is going to be fuming with us for that. Right.
Any more? Any football?
These are all going to be football related. So let's get through them. Who's the luckiest player? Liverpool.
The luckiest or unluckiest? Luckiest.
We're going to start with luckiest.
Luckiest player?
Spoiler alert. Unluckiest. We're going to go through next.
You first.
I don't know.
Mo
Salah, I guess.
This question
just by
comes,
virtue of him, so many of his finishes might have easily have bounced to the other side of the post, but they haven't. They've gone in, and he's the top scorer Liverpool have ever had in the Premier League. I don't know. That's just a tough one, really.
To be fair, that question comes highly recommended by our producer Ian Kroll. I've changed from manager to player because our managers aren't lucky.
Oh, okay. What you could possibly say Quivin Kelleher, purely because he's unlucky in the sense that he's got the world's best goalkeeper in front of him, but he's been slightly fortunate in the fact that he now keeps on getting injured, so he's now getting his minutes. And this is why that question's daft, because that's a stupid question. Okay, unlucky, exactly. Yeah.
No, I don't know. In terms of lucky, you can say unlucky with players who've had a history of injuries, I guess. But it's not always luck, I guess.
Again, so you make your own luck, as the phrase goes, as Paul just used, and there is no such thing as fortune anyway.
What's the most complete performance you've ever seen from a Liverpool team? Ian, you go first.
Okay. When they beat Nottingham Forest 5-0 in 1988.
I thought you might say
anybody who's ever seen that, you might think, oh, Forest, they're rubbish, but they weren't then. And they just come off the back of, that's a season, 87-88, where Liverpool lost 4 games all season, 2 against Everton, one in the league, one in the League Cup. They lost against Wimbledon in the FA Cup final, and they lost against Nottingham Forest in the league. And that was literally just around the same time they played Forest in the Cup semi-final one, and that was around the same time that they played this game at Anfield. Forest were a very good team, and they won 5-0. It could have been about 15. Ever watch the highlights? Just make sure you watch it.
Yeah.
Probably a full game, the 7-0 against United jumps out, particularly second half, and everything just seemed to be coming off perfectly.
It's not full game.
First half against Man City in the FA Cup semi-final was up there.
That was good. Yeah.
City obviously came back into it, didn't they? But Liverpool held on. I mean, the 5-0 at Old Trafford was one as well, wasn't it?
4-0 at home to United was a
4-0 at
particularly
home was up there, yeah.
complete. I'd probably go for 4-0 against Real Madrid. I know Real Madrid weren't as good then, but they were still a team packed full of very, very good players. And from the moment that game kicked off to the moment the game
Torres turned to Pepe.
Yeah, and Torres, I've never seen a player more up for a game than Torres that day. He wanted to absolutely, I don't know, it was a foul probably for the opening goal, but he was so up for it and just ran them ragged. It was a really good performance.
3-0 against Man City in the quarter-final at home in the Champions League in 2018. Because you had the first half of them absolutely blowing them away. Then you had the second half of them defending very, very well, in which Trent Alexander-Arnold, of course, who cannot defend, did very well up against Leroy Sané. And whatever happened to Leroy Sané, eh?
Yeah. Trent can't defend.
No,
It's funny how we're only just discovering this.
It's funny.
Even though he's been playing for Liverpool since 2017.
And they've won quite a lot of trophies. Imagine winning all that without him.
Some defence they've got there to carry him because the best defensive record in the Prem at the moment.
Yeah, it's just a very odd conversation. But
I think we're going to be having this conversation about Trent defending for ever and ever during international breaks. It just seems to rear its head whenever England play.
But what makes me laugh is that, and anybody who watches football will agree, what's got a higher standard, the Champions League or international football? Answer, Champions League. Trent's played in 3 finals, and suddenly he's not good enough to play for England.
Players to ever do that.
Yeah.
He'll be 38, having just won his 12th consecutive Champions League with Real Madrid, and having not conceded a goal, and people will be saying, but he played in goal for England today, but he just can't defend.
I just worry about him in a big game.
Yeah. Should have done better with the
England played him as their only centre. England played him as their only centre back today in a 1-7-4 formation, but he didn't defend well enough. It's just ridiculous.
So, which you called Roy Keane lazy and dangerous or something?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Called it, and if he wants to have a word with me about it, I'm quite happy to.
Feel free to come on.
Shout
this
from a very long distance away.
Keep him to the side of the glass.
Chris Brack said
he's all right, Roy Keane.
Andy Lonergan is the luckiest player. Got to be third choice and won loads of medals doing nothing on the pitch.
Did he actually get any medals though? If he didn't take part?
Yeah, good point.
I'm sure he did.
And unluckiest is Sturridge. It's probably a good shout. Someone very unlucky with injuries.
But then
But there are those stories about like Sir Gerrard.
Joe Gomez has been unlucky because of the impact injuries that he's had.
Yeah.
Whereas Sturridge just had loads of muscle injuries, which normally indicates that your body probably just can't handle it, and don't always think that's luck.
There's certain players whose bodies, you're right, because Big June, Duncan Ferguson, he's one. Everton, Andy Carroll, he was another one. They were always said that their bodies weren't quite right for the sport, basically, in the position they were playing in. But they were just, they couldn't do much about that.
Yeah. What is the worst thing about modern football, Ian? No, I'm asking Ian. There's an obvious answer. There's an obvious answer that you complain about on a weekly basis that I thought you might say.
The Premier League anthem?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just me being me, though, isn't it? It's not, you can, no one's going to kick off about that, really, apart from me, relentlessly. Worst thing about modern football? Honestly, it's boring. It's boring. And I know that's not what you want to hear on a podcast, but it's so predictable. And I think part of the reason football became that popular is because it's an imperfect game. It's an imperfect game where you can have... it's a sport where, because the scoring is low, you can get shocks. And when, just take, for example, look at the FA Cup, people went, there's always shocks in the FA Cup. Then it wasn't always shocks in the FA Cup. In fact, there's probably a bit fewer now than there used to be. But the pitches... in the League Cup. But the pitches were obviously... The pitches are too good. Basically, everything's now...
Pitches are too good.
But I'll tell you why now. Everything's now set around the very, very best players to be the very best they can be, which is fine up until a point. Now you look at the clubs that are in the Champions League, they're always the same clubs, almost always. Look how many times Real Madrid win it. It's quite boring now. There's always teams that dominate for certain periods. But it just seems now as though
You sorry you asked?
Old man shouts at cloud.
no. It just seems as though it's like VAR. There are certain things that have come in, like the ball going over the line, goal line technology. That's fine, right? Because that is a definite.
Yeah.
And some points with VAR are good, where the offsides when they get the semi-automated thing, fine.
Subjective and objective.
Yeah, that's fine, right? But they're just trying to get everything to be absolutely accurate, and you can't.
I agree
and
with
you
that.
can't do that. And it also goes with the off-the-field stuff, where we don't even want to go down the Man City route. You don't want teams winning stuff all the time, because what will happen over time, and it's absolutely guaranteed because it's happened in the past, people will get fed up, get bored, and go off and do something else, and suddenly you get empty seats in the stands at all the clubs, and if that goes on over time, then people will not be interested in playing the sport, and then there won't be people coming through, and suddenly the stand will go down, etc., etc., etc.
Funny enough, Jonathan Wilson wrote something similar along those lines for The Guardian over the weekend, basically saying football's existential crisis. For me, probably the most boring thing is how normalised conversations along things like Man City's charges, Man City's ATP, battle with the Premier League, points deductions, PSR, breaches, how all of that has just become normalised in conversations with, normal fans. Like for us, journalists who cover football, we have to talk about these things occasionally from time to time, even though Liverpool generally steer clear of it all. But I went to watch a game, I went to watch one of the Euros games over the summer, and I was sitting there having a pint, and then I could just hear these two lads to the right of me talking about PSR, breaches and all that sort of stuff. And I was just thinking, football fans shouldn't have to learn about all this. That, like, they should just be talking about what players are your team bringing in over the summer, how they're going to fit in, what formations the manager going to go with, just normal football things. And I think
just playing devil's advocate, has that not been the case for a while though? In terms of, like, we used to talk about Man United's commercial performance compared to Liverpool, and Liverpool need to catch up, and they've been left behind. And then after that it was Abramovich and Chelsea spending more money than anyone else. Haven't those off the field issues always kind of been around the periphery of? Maybe they've come more to the fore.
I think maybe I just sort of see it more because we're around the coverage of football more than most, aren't we? But it just seems to be now that the normal sort of traditional discussion points of football are forgotten, and now it's just about who owns your club, what's their human rights record, how much have you been allowed to spend this summer, and it's just
tribalism is annoying as well, certainly on social media, which carries on from what you were saying. I just find the whole thing I think a lot of football fans are the same, and I think sometimes they forget that they just have different teams that they support. And the best story that's happened over the past 25 years was Leicester winning the league by miles. Because I know they had a bit of investment, but it was nothing like the likes of Liverpool, Man United, City and all of them, but they showed that you can still... There was kind of a perfect storm, we've done this so many times, but the fact that they were able to do it does suggest that there is still hope, but there's too much time fiddling around with, as Gorsty just said, stuff that isn't to do with men or women just running around on the pitch, just kicking this ball into a net, which is what it should be about.
I'll tell you mine is, but before I do that, the other good story I think was after the Super League debacle, but the way that fans put tribalism aside and just came together to stop that. And you
I'm
don't
still
see
insistent that would never have even been a thing if it hadn't been locked for lockdown.
Maybe,
There's no way they'd have even attempted to get it through, because if that was a kick-off when people were supposed to be staying in their homes, imagine what it would have been like had they actually all been out and about.
Yeah, well,
dead in the water within like 2 days, weren't it?
But that's testament to the fan backlash, as they did it without having to be on the streets or whatever and marching, and it was good to see tribalism go to one side to make sure that happened, especially among the clubs that were involved who compete with each other a lot. So I thought that was good. My biggest issue is just the talk of referees and people, people expecting perfection from human beings, and we talked before about VAR and that, and I just find it not just that, the nonsense of I want consistency. This idea that you're going to get consistency out of referees is just complete and utter nonsense. That's like saying every player should score every penalty. There are a million different reasons. They might be nervous. They might have a bad off moment, they might change their mind, they might scuff it. There's loads of different reasons why they might get it wrong. And it's the same with referees. They might see something, they might not, they might be influenced by something. They're human beings. And this idea that you're going to get consistency, and it's not a conspiracy against your football team. That, you know, like all these lunatics who get together and then support each other with the, well, look, we don't get pens. We don't get penalties. You know, there's no team in the Premier League are not getting decisions for any
clubs,
reason.
That's another thing that's become annoying for me. Is that some clubs aren't being responsible enough in their reaction to things like that, and they're kind of fanning the flames.
But moaning about referees as well for me is a boring one, because it just gives people an out when they don't know what they're talking about. It's just like the easy one, just say, "Oh, the ref was terrible."
The refs do.
There's more to it, isn't it?
And people have always moaned about refs, and that will always be. But, you know, like, people saying that the standard of referee in this country is awful. Well, is it? Is it any different from any other country? You know, I'm pretty sure in Germany they're all angry with their referees. I'm pretty sure, because that's the nature of football.
They see them all the time. Yeah.
And if you think back to my childhood, and the referees were like, I don't know, Graham Poll and Jeff Winter and Uriah Rennie and
David Ellery.
You know, all those types of, and they get stick every week. You know, like, and they were the same. You'd think they weren't very good. But then, as time's gone on, you think, well, they were just, you know, if you put me in the middle of that pitch, I wouldn't get any decisions right.
Well, don't forget,
it's really hard.
referees went professional, didn't they, 20, 25 years ago, something like that. So everybody expected an increase in the level, which there was. But, as you say, it's like you. Do you reckon you're going to come into this podcast and every single time you're going to be as bad as you are now? Sometimes you'll be better.
The difference, I suppose, with refereeing in football is most people who watch football at some point in their lives have tried to kick a ball. They've tried to, you know, whether they've actually played or not to any sort of standard but they've tried to kick a ball and they know how hard it is. But I'd say 95% of the people who slag referees off week in, week out have never, ever, ever tried to referee a game of football.
And 100% of them, if you said, do you want to be a referee, they'll say no chance.
No chance.
Because they know exactly what gets, you know, the referees have to put up with.
So,
and at least with referees, they can run away. Poor assistant referees are stuck on the touchline. They get it all the time. That's just off my dad again, by the way.
I'm not so much saying that you can't say, oh, the ref had a bad game today. You can have a moan, because that's normal from football fans, of course. But this idea that there's a conspiracy, or there needs to be consistency, or the standard of refereeing is poor, you know, come on. We'll still be having these conversations 20 years.
You get good refs, you get bad refs, but, you know, that's just the way it is. I blame the people who make the laws of the game anyway, because they just keep on changing them all the time. Again, it goes back to it. They're trying to make an imperfect game perfect, and you can't do it, so stop.
Whether you're good, you're bad, or you're indifferent, and you're bald and you're from Greater Manchester.
Yeah.
Tends to be what these referees are. I think if you put them all in the lineup, I couldn't tell you who's who. I know the names, but I couldn't put names to faces. Yeah, referees don't really interest me. I'll probably tell you Anthony Taylor, but other than that, I don't know. Like Neil Swarbrick, like I couldn't tell you what he looks like.
Who's the brothers? There was a pair of brothers, man.
Madleys,
yeah.
Andy and Rob.
Right, we don't have any more questions, so we're going to ask one more to finish off. Why, Doyle, is your picture from like 1982 and mine and Gorsty have got these extra
Well, the
modern
reason for
photographs?
that is because that picture is actually from 2015, I think it is, and even then, I would still be older than you two are now. So, you know, you can't, you know, you can beat a lot of things, but you can't beat time, undefeated. So I feel as though I'm being represented more fairly and accurately in that picture.
Fair enough, that's quite a good answer. I didn't really expect a thoroughly detailed and justified answer. Right, well, we'll leave it there. We'll be back on Friday to look forward to some football and to not have to fill spaces during the international game break.
And we will not be annoying Derek, is it?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No chance of tea until November.
Sorry, Derek.
We hope that Joe River will improve the standard of his output.
Not having that. I'm top of the league for the reason.
Your own league.
Oh, Wednesday. I'll let you do it. We've got a couple of podcasts coming on Wednesday.
Busy day for me on Wednesday. So in the early afternoon, I will be hosting Paul Machin of Redmen TV, because he's got a brand new book called The Man Who Stole the World Cup. And then later in the day, I will be speaking to Paul Kahn of Spirits of Shankly. So, yeah, couple coming up on Wednesday, and then we'll have our usual Blood Red on Friday as well, won't we?
Yeah, we certainly will. To look ahead to that Chelsea game. And start of a very busy period for Liverpool Football Club. So we will see you then. Ta-ra.